said a lot of things that a lot of people have been thinking about. Project Bluebeam, talking about non-human biologics. When he was asked, so they come from outer space, he said, well, not necessarily. Their origin cannot be deemed to be not of this earth. That was key. Scenario where the government was involved in creating superhumans or non-human biologics.
Are you ready to learn how?
What in ever-loving Christ is this? What have I done?
Methods of genocide and eugenics. This would be one way to limit the population, eliminate both mental and physical sickness to improve the quality of life. Of these procedures.
Yes.
Why didn't they build you to look like a machine?
At the lab were Martin Nowak, another man head of the lab, the 23andMe owner, Anne Wojcicki, who is the sister of YouTube.
Been bought and paid for or created.
So you have the capacity.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Gotcha.
I was like, hey, they shouldn't be messing with molecular software if they don't understand it, because then shit may happen that you don't expect. See, Grush, who testified, said a lot of things that a lot of people have been thinking about. Project Bluebeam, talking about non-human biologics. He also made mention in a quote, when he was asked, so they come from outer space, he said, well, not necessarily. Their origin cannot be deemed to be not of this earth. That was key. And then you have to think to yourself, if they've conducted such experiments in this scenario where the government was involved in creating superhumans or non-human biologics, hybrids, whatever, right? That's also playing with fire, because you don't know what they're capable of, so you don't fuck with them. And if you do, you push boundaries to see just how far they can go. And the reason you would do that is public reaction. If the existence of such things become public knowledge, then the government might fear a potential societal backlash, panic, or demands for transparency and accountability, right? Don't look at Antarctica at all. Not like we have one of the biggest signal inducers and communicators for a very long time. Would you go home? There are ethical implications. The government may be very concerned with ethical implications such as potential violations of human rights or bioethical standards, with all those experiments and stuff. And there could be the fear by the people in other nations about misuse of such non-human biologics that may be able to walk among many others that could be hostile entities to the own government that created them and external forces. And, some of these experimented on humans or created, whatever you want to call them, may indeed be more powerful and intelligent, yet crave to be simple. And the government may fear controlling them, but one thing is key: unpredictability. That is something that science has proven time and time again that just because you knock out a gene, just because you can create something with an interface, just because it may seem kind or controllable, well, there are characteristics that are unknown, and there is genetic crosstalk, and that could be a potential threat to the government itself. Now, think of it this way. Because the people are supposedly curious and there's pressure, they're talking about aircraft encounters. Almost feels like the fourth and elected branch of government needs to blame someone for their actions. And maybe they'll throw under the bus, the Faucis and the atrocious monsters, maybe, and blame it on them in some weird, society of, I don't know, people that are upgraded, I guess.
Connect your mind, connect your soul, connect your body, enter the simulation.
Are we still not on speaking terms, sir?
If we were, I'd tell you to go fuck yourself. Lyndon.
Well, I know one thing I didn't before.
What's that?
You didn't bring me out here for the view. This place is uglier than my granddad's toenails.
Mr. President, I'm Valiant Thor.
Well, bless your heart. Of course you are. And I'm Calamity Jane.
I like your sense of humor, sir. You might need it. Please, this way. Are you ready to learn how the world works, Mr. President?
Pretty good idea how the world works, Sonny.
Of course you do.
As I live and shit, what in ever-loving Christ is this? What have I done?
We are going to become gods. Period. If you don't like it, get off. You don't have to contribute. You don't have to participate. But if you're going to interfere with me becoming God, you're going to have big trouble. Then we'll have warfare. The only way you can prevent me in this 50 or is to kill me. If you kill me, I'll kill you.
Learn how to engineer bodies and brains and minds. These will be the main products of the economy, of the 21st century economy. Not textiles and vehicles and weapons, but bodies and brains and minds.
The administration believes that there are loopholes that could allow the cloning of human beings if the technology were developed. Therefore, today I am issuing a directive that bans the use of any federal funds for any cloning of human beings. Effective immediately, no federal agency may support, fund, or undertake such activity. Of course, a great deal of research and activity in this area is supported by private funds. That is why I am urging the entire scientific and medical community, every foundation, every university, every industry that supports work in this area, to heed the federal government's example. I'm asking for a voluntary moratorium on the cloning of human beings until our Bioethics Advisory Commission and our entire nation have had a real chance to understand and debate the profound ethical implications of the latest advances. As we gain a fuller understanding of this technology, we must proceed not just with caution, but also with a conscience, by insisting that not a single taxpayer dollar supports human cloning, and by urging a moratorium on all private research in this area. We can ensure that as we move forward on this issue, we weigh the concerns of faith and family and philosophy and values, not merely of science alone. Thank you very much.
Here's what I wrote in my book.
Yeah.
Way back in the 80s. I talked about the Genome Project, and I said, here's what I said. I said, what they're doing is mapping out the human genetics so that they can clone humans and create a race of people with the traits that they want to rule, eventually. Now, this won't happen for a long time.
Hitler tried to do it with breeding.
Yeah, but they're going to do it in the laboratory.
Cloning, yeah.
Yeah, you watch. And I said that eventually a human being will be cloned. And I said this years and years and years ago, and I've said it on this broadcast many, many times. The whole purpose of the Genome Project, if they carry it through to its ultimate conclusion, is to be able to manufacture humans.
In 1980, the Supreme Court rules that live human-made organisms are patentable. In 1996, Dolly the sheep was famously and successfully cloned, although not officially announced until 1997. Scientists cloned rhesus monkeys, a cow, a mouse, and a lamb named Polly, who had a human gene in every cell of its body. Despite Bill Clinton signing a 5-year moratorium on human cloning, Richard Seed announces that he plans to clone a human. In 1998, Ryuzo Yanagamuchi cloned mice from other cloned mice. Japanese scientists claim to have cloned 8 cows from one single cow. In 2002, the first human is cloned at Clonate, an American cloning organization that operates out of the Bahamas and functions under the philosophical principles of the UFO religion, Raelism. The clone was named Eve. In 2003, France and South Korea both cloned rabbits. Around 2005, there are more reports of human cloning. Kanye West's new video, Famous, exposes the cloning process in politics, the media, and the music industry. Kanye met with artist Vincent Desiderio, the man behind the artwork the video is modeled after. Desiderio subsequently loved the video and said, "I was really speechless. Kanye saw things in it that I don't know how he could have seen. Kanye is truly an artist. Talking to him was like speaking to any of my peers in the art world. Actually, more like talking to the brightest art students that have their eyes wide open." Here he references Kubrick's film Eyes Wide Shut, which is about Illuminati cults and orgies. The video starts in the clouds. The effects make it look like an old VHS tape and reminds us of childhood. We sink into the clouds, the abyss, the comfort of childhood, our minds now wide open, ready to accept whatever comes next. The news works in a similar way, flashing graphics and quick cuts before news or commercials. Certain patterns can jump the brain into an accepting state. The brain can be made to normalize as something irrational. Kanye's video also cuts rapidly. We see close-up pixelized faces, an all-seeing eye. The quick cuts and clashing sounds creates a disturbing feeling, keeping us on the edge and feeling scattered. Kanye seems to be saying that the world's superpowers are all metaphorically or literally in bed together, and there's something sexual and sinister connected with this wealth and power. The mainstream media says the celebrities in the video are wax mannequins. However, we can clearly see them breathing in different parts of the video. Kanye draws attention to the breathing by having over half the music video silent, with the exception of the heavy breathing. Could he be trying to show us that these wax mannequins are actually living? Could this be Kanye's expose on a cloning factory? Follow me down. Celebrities, politicians, and the world's richest individuals have been using cloning technology for some time. Just take a look at Clonade's website, where they not so subtly brag about cloning Michael Jackson. The government has been interested in clones for a long time. It began with experiments attempting to control the mind so average people could be made into assassins, couriers, and spies. The project eventually transitioned into the more reliable practice of cloning, in which a soulless individual can be created. Clones can be used as sex slaves, political tools, anything their creators desire, because they are essentially robots. The public has been made to think the celebrity meltdowns are normal behavior, so we don't question the continually odd behavior displayed by those churned out by the culture industry. Kanye West's influence as a celebrity resonates with the youth who see celebrities as idols. Kanye is helping to normalize orgiastic imagery, pushing the government's agenda of sexualizing the population into a time of transhumanism. Transhumanism benefits include super longevity, super intelligence, and super well-being. Through technology, we can rise above our human nature and live better. But if medical companies figure out these keys to life, then we will become indebted to them even more heavily than we already are. If everybody lived forever, what about overpopulation? Sustaining life on other planets doesn't seem like a reality, but governments have perfected methods of genocide and eugenics. This would be one way to limit the population and keep the resources for the rich. We have already integrated our technology. Mechanical tools like phones interact with organic elements like our voice to improve communication. If the fusion of technology with the organic continues, it seems likely that we will eventually hack our own bodies and minds, so they will be able to do much more than humanly possible. It also seems possible that robots could turn into advanced forms of artificial intelligence. There may come a day when it is impossible to distinguish between an AI and a human, or maybe there will be no difference. A scary aspect about merging technology is the fear of losing control of our bodies and minds. Think of how a virus created by a hacker can affect a computer system. Think of how often thousands of computers are affected at once by the same virus. If we hand our consciousness over to a company in exchange for superintelligence, we risk losing ourselves to that company if their technology fails, or if they decide to control or kill anybody using their technology. Transhumanism aims to eliminate both mental and physical sickness to improve the quality of life. Designer babies have genes manipulated to keep them free from illness and disease. This sounds great until you realize this technology will not be available to the average expecting couple. The cost of these procedures will be astronomical and thus reserved only for the wealthiest families. How will naturally birthed children be able to compete in a society with designer babies who possess super longevity or immortality, super intelligence, and exist in a state of constant well-being? The answer is they will not. The elite have found a perfect formula for weeding out the poor, the minorities, the unwanted, in other words, the majority of the population who are simply seen as vermin by the elite. Secret societies require members to go through certain rites of passage, similar to the hazing that happens in college fraternities. However, the rites of passage require to enter extremely powerful cults that grant individuals power, fame, and money on the level of Kanye West, Kim Kardashian, Taylor Swift, and George W. Bush are satanic and depraved in nature. These initiations are recorded and can be used as blackmail later if the celebrities refuse to comply or hold up their end of the pact. Corey Feldman says that pedophilia is the biggest problem in Hollywood.
The number one problem in Hollywood was and is and always will be pedophilia.
Kanye's video points to a soulless fame, and what is more soulless than a clone? Taylor Swift lashed out against the video, but Kim Kardashian defended her husband and used the argument as a plot in an episode on her show. The whole argument felt contrived, a continuation of the 2009 Taylor and Kanye feud. The silence from the rest of the celebrities in the video speaks volumes towards their enslavement to the music industry.
You're a machine, aren't you?
Yes.
Why didn't they build you to look like a machine? Why didn't they build you out of metal with bolts and wires and electrodes and things like that? Why'd they turn you into a lie?
Resurrecting the woolly mammoth and even undoing the damages of aging, Church is the modern Prometheus. He is literally referred to as the father of genetics. Remember his name.
It's who you know. That's how you live forever. It's who you know. Yeah.
But Church was not alone. Other notable names at the lab were Martin Nowak, another man often named as head of the lab.
Maybe you could introduce yourself.
My name is Martin Nowak, and I'm a professor of mathematics and of biology at Harvard University.
I think Martin wanted to talk about the kind of relationship between design and evolution.
Nowak wasn't only a recipient of Epstein money, but also Gates money, and sometimes they funded the same project. Here is Martin Nowak lecturing to Epstein and associates on what appears to be a tropical island.
I'm kind of like cooperate to keep a loaded gun on your belt. That'd be me.
You are cooperating?
Cooperate to keep a loaded gun on your belt. In other words, cooperate with what's your back. I find, if you get away from simple A versus B, you get to a situation where it's fine to cooperate, but it pays to be cynical. Or trust and verify, but, something like that. I find in the real world, for me, maybe outside of kinship relationships, or maybe even with, you have to really kind of, what's the nuance? You're not going to defect immediately, but you want to keep your running shoes on.
Yes, I often ask myself, how do people really play these games of cooperation and defection?
Here we see Martin Nowak, George Church, and Epstein deep in conversation, somewhere warm and sandy.
CIA and these underground dumps are full of freelance black scientists. These underground dumps have all kinds of black projects and always have, since World War II at least, but probably before. And these scientists come up and they're on their deathbed, they do interviews, they can't live with themselves, they're afraid what's going to happen to them. And they start talking about this stuff. And they're all saying the same thing. Now, this article is from December the 8th, 1968, and it says, induced twinning and transplants eyed for more beef for future. So they are already going hog wild, no pun intended. They're going nuts right here, trying to figure out all these different ways to use, they're calling it induced twinning. It says a regular part of tomorrow's cattle breeding program may be induced twinning and ova transplants. Dr. E.S.E. Havitz, WSU research animal physiologist, told the university-sponsored beef cattle conference. So they're already figuring out how to make money and do things that really don't sound too healthy for people who eat meat, to be honest with you. It says cows normally produce one ovum per heat period, but multiple ovulations can be induced by sex-stimulating hormones, Dr. Havitz says. So, you know, they're talking about egg transfer in cattle and breeding methods here. And, you know, it's just, it's all the things I believe that they're already doing with humans. Now, here's an article from a website called itfeelsgoodplus.wordpress.com. Cloning, Hitler and Mengele, we are able to produce people. And this guy's name, I can't pronounce it. It's Piotr Griswoks. Piotr Griswoks. He's an author, an independent writer and journalist, a philosopher, and a satiric humanist and innovator. We may think that we won the Second World War. Not really. The main forces of Nazism and fascism escaped and established their strong hidden presence across the world. Nazis knew a long time before that they lost. See assassination of Hitler. Knowing about certain defeat, they prepared many road of evacuation. This guy's obviously got an accent. So he's talking about they already knew that they were going to lose and they prepared for this. They built a huge machine of deception and diversion that no one can crack and face so far. Hiding money in Swiss banks, receiving acceptance from most powerful during mid-war time world banks, and creating unbreakable and impenetrable system of support for all fellow war criminals was part of the bigger plan of coming back. And it's just like Albert Pike says in the Morals and Dogma, which is all of the rites and rituals and levels, all the way through the 32nd degree. The 33rd degree is not included. But it's clearly at the 19th degree that the initiate is made aware that Satan is the God, the light. So I believe that people like Mengele already knew they were going to come to the United States, because clearly in Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, he states that the Mason is always loyal, or the Illuminati is always loyal to the Illuminati first. And this is true with Skull and Bones. This is true with all of these secret societies. They are loyal to each other first, even during war. And it clearly states that if you come upon a soldier and they are Illuminati and he is fighting for the enemy, or a Freemason, and he is fighting for the enemy, your first loyalty is to that Freemason or that Illuminati member, or to that Skull and Bones, or to that Knights of Pythias, who Paul Ryan, I believe it's Paul Ryan and Rience Priebus, they all belong to a secret society of one kind or another. But all of these are the same. Your first loyalty is to them. And that's what the Illuminati is. It's like a conglomeration of secret societies. It says the history of Joseph Mengele is golden example of conspiracy that keeps Nazism alive. And he's still, I have still been looking for who he might be, because I believe he's still alive. I believe he body jumps. One person who talks about cloning and Joseph Mengele is Max Spears. And he talks about cloning a lot. And it's exactly, they're all saying the same thing. There's no, you could talk about somebody that came out in the year 2000. You could talk about somebody that came out in 2011. You could talk about somebody that came out in the 80s. You could talk about somebody that came out in the 90s, whether it's a scientist, whether it's an MK Ultra victim. But I think Mengele could very well still be alive. And Max Spears talks about Mengele, how he always looks like he's 60 years old or in his late 50s. And he's always in good shape, but he never ages. And he goes by different names. Dr. Green, I think, is one of his names. And Dr. Green, of course, you know, the Green Man is Satan. Nevertheless, this story is about cloning and genetic manipulation of human code. However, in my opinion, you can't talk about genetics, but disregard the work of Joseph Mengele, the angel of death and the god of Auschwitz. He conducted his research on bigger pole of alive material, which was prisoners of Auschwitz. So he has had always people at his disposal, children, babies, to torture and mind control and do cloning experiments on. And this writer says that he looked for ways to produce clones of people. He absolutely did. If you go to DuckDuckGo, or, I don't use Google, but if you go to DuckDuckGo to a search engine and search Mengele, city of twins or town of twins, you will see that there's a whole Nazi village of cloned people in Brazil. And it just so happens that's where Mengele went. Surviving Mengele. All of these twins. This was his big experiment. They called it twinning. It wasn't twinning, it was cloning. So I want to thank Joe Ayala again, and Truman. Truman doesn't like cloning. He's very upset about it. He wants me to stop talking about it, but there's a storm on its way, so I'm trying to hurry this up. So I want to thank Joe Ayala for sending me this link to this thread. And it's a thread from Jeffrey Peterson. And thank you, Joe. And he says, a year ago today, I published a controversial thread. Truman, please. Truman. A year ago today, I published a controversial thread about a time I overheard individuals talking about cloning experiments at a Democrat Party fundraiser. At the time, I did not disclose the identities of the individuals involved in such endeavors. However, I will name them tonight. First of all, here is a link to the thread I published a year ago today about overhearing conversations related to cloning. And he says, this is not a joke. I said I will never lie to you, and I will not. I clearly overheard it, and I could see that others who were there were also uneasy. I know what I heard. They are doing real-life experiments with cloning on remote islands. This is the truth. So now I wonder if Epstein Island was used for this type of thing as well. He continues, I cannot tell you exactly what, how, or where. I am 100% sure what I heard, and I saw pictures, images with examples. It is being done on islands, and very high money Democrat-linked personalities are involved. Sometime soon, I will answer questions about what I heard in more detail. Says, so Donald Marshall was correct. He's not a fraud, as many try to allude to. Well, of course, if they're doing this, they don't want people to know. But there's no way they're not doing this. That's the way I'm looking at it. I don't believe there's a way they're not doing this. Michigan Chemtrails posts this article on Daily Mail about there's some show on Netflix that is showing human sleeves in glass cases. Well, you know what? Netflix is part of it. They have some kind of karma thing where they have to tell us the truth. And what they try to do is obscure it. That's the way they look at it anyway. They think they're dodging karma. These people think that they are just untouchable. And Rick Sanchez says, movies like The Island with Ewan McGregor are a sick kind of disclosure for these people. New Atlantis says, bad movie, but lots of truth revealed. So let's go back to Jeffrey Peterson. Although at the time I published the above thread, many people were skeptical. I said at the time it was a true account, and it was. One of the specific individuals I overheard speaking with Nancy Pelosi regarding cloning experiments was John Sperling. And here's a picture of John, who is, these people. Sperling was the founder of the University of Phoenix, one of the largest, if not largest, for-profit universities in the United States. I clearly overheard Sperling speaking with Pelosi about advanced cloning experiments on living beings, including animals and humans, and I don't doubt it one bit. And he's obviously eyeball deep in it. He goes on. The other individual I heard both Pelosi and Sperling speaking about relating to cloning experiments being done on remote islands was Jeff Bezos, CEO of Amazon. Bezos was not there, but they were talking about him. And Pelosi kept saying, he's doing mine. He's doing mine. And in case you forgot, he sends penis pictures through the mail or through email. I understand that sounds completely insane, but that is what I heard. I will also note that Pelosi was drinking and seemed tipsy to me, but it didn't sound like a joke to me. On several occasions when I was around her, she was drinking a lot. I will still write more about this in time. So Ron Hughes posts a link to Scientific American, and it claims the first human cloned embryo was November 24th, 2001, or around in there, but I question that.
talking about cloning and torturing. We're going to get into this and we're going to expose how far cloning has come and what's going on with it right now. This is going to be kind of like, it's going to remind us of, there's several movies that the elite, that Hollywood has put out, that in your mind, if you've seen some of these movies, it's just going to click with you. Remember, they put everything out in movies, in books, in songs, in our faces, and a lot of times we don't even catch what's going on. And now we're starting to learn that all the movies, all the books, everything in our faces has been real, okay? So what I'm going to be talking about today, I'm going to be exposing and sharing testimony from a young man named Donald Marshall. I know some of you have heard about him because some of you guys have tried to point me to him online, but I already knew about him, but we're going to cover him today, okay? And the things that he said, they sound bizarre. If you've never heard this stuff, this is going to sound bizarre to you, okay? But I knew that he was speaking enough truth because it caught my attention. And of course, I had my husband Scott sit down and watch what he had to say as well. Because it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing, y'all. Many times when we hear something that just sounds so crazy, we just dismiss it. Well, that's not even true. And you just go on about life. And you just blow it off and you're like, there was no bit of truth in that. Well, I'm going to tell you something. We're going to depict everything that he was talking about, and I'm going to show you how it links into truth that God has been revealing. Okay? This next picture I have, it's a picture from the movie Inception. And see, they were putting themselves in a dream state. And what was going on in their dreams was like it was actually happening. When you look at this picture, they're all inside of a van, strapped in with seatbelts and everything else. But they're all like agents, and they're all asleep. But what's really happening in their dream is really happening where they're physically at. The water is starting to burst into the van, and they're still sleeping in this dream world. It's like two different realities happening at the same time, okay? And sometimes in this dream state, you would see this agent, you would see Leonardo DiCaprio's character, he would leave this task that he was doing, and it's like he would go over into like this peaceful, this other part of the dream world and be like with his wife. And he would remember memories and times and things that he had going on with her. And the picture that I have there is like they're over here on the beach building, you know, like sandcastles and stuff. And the other agents would come in the dream and try to get him back out of that, like get back over here, you know, and get on task. So it's kind of like this just bouncing back and forth in this dream that's real, okay? It's hard sometimes to get your mind around. It's one of those kind of movies, you know, those kind where you watch the whole thing and then at the end you go, what was that? I've watched some of those where it's like, it's because in your normal life, this kind of stuff is so far out there that sometimes it takes us a little bit to get it. But there are people that are living this for real, for real. And when we learn about that, it's just kind of like, you know, my dreams, they're just my dreams. They stay at home in the bed where, you know, once you wake up, that's gone, right? But there's people that are living this life, and we're going to learn about them today. Okay, since I shared that message where I gave that information from Dr. Beater on cloning, do you know, remember he talked about the different kinds.
What I am about to reveal, I am revealing primarily for history. I know even before I reveal it that some of my listeners will desert me after they hear it, saying it just cannot be. Test tube babies are now a reality, and that began not long ago in England, where the mystery of DNA was first unraveled. Then, of course, there are clones, that is, creatures which are reproduced by artificial means and which are exact duplicates of an original. Clones of all kinds of animals have been produced successfully in the laboratory, but that is not what bothers people. In the recent past, it has been claimed that human clones are also possible, and that some may already be in existence. These last claims about human clones have been ridiculed, denied, and suppressed by all kinds of officials. The reason is that the idea of duplicate human beings impinges upon a super-secret realm of intelligence activities by both Russia and the United States.
Robotoids, synthetics, and clones and all the different kinds. We're not surprised to hear this term now, to hear this terminology. We know it's real. We know it exists, okay? So that's not like a shocker. Shouldn't be a shocker anymore. If it is to you, go back and watch the message I did on cloning. Okay. Since then, it's been mentioned by Al Bielek. Remember the messages I did on Opening in the Abyss, Part 1 and 2? I covered the Montauk experiments and Philadelphia Project, all of those things. Al Bielek talked about cloning nonchalantly, like, of course, our government leaders and different people, they're cloned. Just matter of fact. And also, the former wife of Colonel George Griggs, Miss Kay Griggs, she talked about cloning. See how the Lord was doing that? He was showing me other messages where what Donald talked about, was there so that we can go, that's real, because these people talked about it too, okay? So now we're going to hear about what Donald shared. And this is a sad, sad thing that a lot of people are mixed up in that we're going to talk about today, all right? Now, at least he wasn't walking intimately with Jesus at the time that the videos that I researched were made, okay? And I want to say also that he is somebody else. When you realize your life is on the line, you make different websites. You try to get that word splashed out there as much and wherever you can. And that's what he's been doing. He has more than one website up now, okay? Because this has been a few years back that he started exposing this stuff, okay? Thank God he came out and started talking about this. Now, there are what are called DUMBs, D-U-M-B-S, all around the world. I'm going to probably talk on that more in another message, okay? But DUMBs, that stands for Deep Underground Military Bases. The first picture that I have here of one, this is underground. It's an underground tunnel. Here in the United States, our DUMBs, our underground military bases, are connected through tunnels. And we have trains that travel, that connect up to all of them. The next picture here, it's another picture of an underground military base. And you see people, you see cars traveling to and fro, you see people walking, going to work, I mean, just like normal. No big deal. Okay, for one, this hasn't been on my radar. I haven't really known about this stuff or paid attention to it, all right? But see, the military and the government, they got their stuff rolling on whether we know about it or not. And they have this linked up under system all over the United States and the world. This next picture is an underground military base and shows a big group of people that were working on this particular project. There are many different things going on in these bases. One thing we learned that's already happening at a base like this, remember the Montauk experiments. Remember how they talked about those different levels, those different floors, and how deep that thing went? Donald shared that these bases have many different floors, and there are different things going on each floor.
Cube, all right?
Yeah. You know, the Lockheed Skunk Works are sort of a state-of-the-art facility up in the high desert of California near Palmdale, Edwards Air Force Base, and in that area. Really? And there's an underground facility, the more modern state-of-the-art facility is called the Cube, C-U-B-E, like a cube, and it's a massive cubic structure underground. It's connected through underground connectors to the Nellis Range, what the pop culture calls Area 51. Nobody really calls it that. And also state-of-the-art.
I do. I call it Area 51. It's just over the hill.
Yep. And that's an older facility at Pahoot Mesa, Groom Lake, S4, S9. And then you have the facility outside Provo, Utah, the Dudley Proving Grounds, and that is also a really state-of-the-art facility, a much more important one than what's at Nellis. And there are underground connectors that connect these facilities. I always tell people nothing really critical is above the surface of the Earth.
And the Cube itself, Doctor?
So the Cube is a research facility. A lot of top scientists work in there for the Lockheed Skunk Works projects. Many of the projects are connected to advanced transdimensional technologies, ET technologies, researching and developing new systems. And it's very highly classified. I personally know an engineer who, at least as of a couple years ago, was working in that facility. And that's, of course, everyone knows the U-2 spy plane came out of the Skunk Works, but what they don't realize is that there's been a parallel project with Lockheed Martin and the Lockheed Skunk Works dealing more specifically with electromagnetic-gravitic, so-called anti-gravity technologies, transdimensional technology, all of those sort of programs. And so the more modern facility is called the Cube.
All right. That do it for you, caller?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, my grandfather actually claimed that he once spoke to a science. He worked out in New Mexico. He studied the effects of space radiation on, I believe, chimpanzees. They launched them, literally took them high into the atmosphere. Claimed. So there's just some old stories, but he picked up a scientist out there, and he claimed that he did. An alien.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much for the call. Many people make that claim.
Well, the New Mexico, that's another whole concept is, a lot of people don't realize the Los Alamos facility is connected underground to the big underground facility that's at the Four Corners area. And back in the 80s, early 90s, everyone heard the towels hum. They heard this humming sound.
That's right.
That was Bechtel Corporation using these nuclear-powered tunneling devices to build a connector between the underground facility at Los Alamos to the Dulce Four Corners facility.
We were affected by that here, Doctor.
Yep. They were hitting bedrock, and it was just vibrating all through that whole area. Of course, a lot of people thought it was some mystery Earth noise, and of course, the people I know in the contracting world were laughing up their sleeve, going, "Yeah, that's our nuclear power tunnel," and it makes this massive, huge tunnel, and it moves at a fairly decent speed and turns the bedrock into glass, so like a classified, liquefied rock, and that's how these connectors are built between these underground facilities.
All right.
He said, for example, a military base that he's taken to has a floor that does not have access, that the military does not have access to. This floor is dedicated to cloning and clones. It's a whole floor that it's only about cloning, and the military does not have access to it.
Google's quantum computer, Sycamore, did something that's going to break your brain. Once again, it achieved quantum supremacy by performing a calculation within a few seconds that Frontier, the most powerful supercomputer in the world, would take 47 years to complete.
Donald calls it the cloning station. He said there is one floor that is just for gene splicing. Now, if you don't know what gene splicing is, listen to this, y'all.
We're here today to announce the first synthetic cell, a cell made by starting with the digital code in the computer, building the chromosome from 4 bottles of chemicals, assembling that chromosome in yeast, transplanting it into a recipient bacterial cell, and transforming that cell into a new bacterial species. So this is the first self-replicating species that we've had on the planet whose parent is a computer.
Do you remember a few years back when double helix DNA discoverer James Watson was cancelled? Well, it's a bit ironic considering the nature of cancellation that he once described Venter as Adolf Hitler and urged his colleagues to act like Churchill in opposing him, rather than act like Chamberlain. This regarded when Venter was an NIH employee who studied mRNA expression in the human brain. The NIH Office of Technology Transfer intended to patent all the genomes it mapped in Venter's name, which should amount to about 1,000 genetic sequences a month. Watson's conjecture was that genes shouldn't be formally patented without understanding their function first, and while I believe that Watson was right in that is how patent law works, but apparently the patent plan was dropped. This little anecdote does interlock with the rest of the puzzle perfectly somehow. And here they are at the Edge Club with 23andMe owner Anne Wojcicki, who is the sister of YouTube's CEO, Susan, and Anne's ex-husband, Google founder Sergey Brin, and their friend Larry Page. Also a Google founder, in case you didn't know that. So could this explain why just simply dropping the name of Epstein's lab in the YouTube comment section activates the censors? Even posts about CRISPR and genetic engineering that won the 2020 Nobel Prize for Chemistry, those can trigger the constantly changing algorithm. But as the Twitter files show, it's hardly necessary for the executives to all be working together for a conspiracy of silence to pervade when the government itself is getting involved, when intelligence agencies are giving the orders. So is there not enough to tie all these figures together yet? Well, check out this article. 2 Massachusetts Institute of Technology researchers were among the first recipients of the new Breakthrough Prize in Life Sciences Wednesday, a new philanthropic venture which rewards scientists with a $3 million prize for contributing research focused on curing intractable disease and elongating human life. Dr. Eric Lander and Dr. Robert Weinberg were both recognized and given the prize. Lander is a leader in human genomic research and a founding director of the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard. Robert Langer,
nanotechnology,
a professor at the Koch Institute at MIT, said both professors are ideal recipients for this award. They are both fantastic, he said. We would not know what we would do today without Lander's enormous contributions. Langer said both scientists are also upstanding people. Not only are these two individuals among the world's top scientists, they are also very nice people and great human beings, he said. I feel privileged to know them. Sure ate those words, didn't he? The Breakthrough Prize was founded this year by 4 of Silicon Valley's elite figures. The founders include Google's co-founder Sergey Brin, his wife and founder of the genetics company 23andMe, Anne Wojcicki.
So Eric was actually one of the first people we consulted with, like in those early days. I think I crashed one of your conferences and I was like, hi. Yeah, I don't think we were invited. But we just showed up and we were like, yeah, we're thinking of launching this and introducing it to people. And it was definitely a controversial idea at that time about what is the right way to do it.
Facebook founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg and Russian entrepreneur and philanthropist Yuri Brin. I'm guessing he's related to Sergey. So, it's all those people that I just mentioned. How funny that keeps happening. Wojcicki said in a press release Wednesday that she was excited to be able to honor these scientists on such a large scale. We are thrilled to support scientists who think big, take risks, and have made significant impact on our lives, she said. These scientists should be household names and heroes in society. What do they call it when you hold a contest and it's got a monetary prize and then you just give it to your friend? Is that fraud or seems like something? Money laundering? I don't know.
It's a remarkable example of something I think that only goes on in the U.S. We have this thing I sometimes call the miracle machine.
Yeah.
You got the federal government, you got philanthropy, and you have industry.
Right.
And that creates this amazing virtuous cycle where we create public goods with the federal government and with philanthropy that get shared all over the place, and then industry runs with that, and then it feeds back. And I don't think a lot of other countries have all of those pieces working together like this.
But one thing is clear to me, that these are not people who are all being silenced by sex trafficking blackmail. Anne Wojcicki even brought her mom and dad to a TED Talk related to the EDGE meetings. At best, sex is an intoxicant which helps facilitate further corruption. These are aging elites that are grasping at the edges of immortality, the power over life and death. They could carve out destiny and create a new world of their design. They talk about it constantly.
Look at this picture, because this picture, it's got 2 scientists there. That's what those 2 regular people, those are 2 scientists. This thing standing in front of them that kind of looks like human, she has a dress on, has this tail coming out, but then it has like animal legs and stuff. That's because this is a chimera. This is part human, part animal. They have spliced genes and they mixed human DNA in here, and this is what was created. This is actually from a movie called Splice. Now, I hope we're getting it. When they're making these movies, they're putting truth in our faces, truth in our faces, truth in our faces. And you see Donald talking about they have a floor with nothing but gene splicing going on.
A newly obtained email from Dr. Anthony Fauci shows that he spoke with an American scientist collaborating with Wuhan researchers at the start of the COVID pandemic. In the email, he discussed the new outbreak in chimeras, which is a virus that is stitched together from multiple distinct viruses.
Now, Tom Horn, if you go into some of his studies and stuff, he's talked about this. He's talked about all the chimeras all around this world. Okay, just like you would see in mythology, where you'd see a man's body and a horse's, man's torso and a horse body, stuff like that. Okay, chimera. Now listen to this. I looked up the definition for chimera. It is a single organism composed of genetically distinct cells. This can result in male and female organs, 2 blood types, or subtle variations in form. Animal chimeras are produced by the merger of multiplied fertilized eggs.
Fear based on the belief that human-animal hybridization research could lead to making centaurs and other such fantastical beings. Taking out of context reports about research combining human and non-human cells and genes to make novel tissues and organs, some posts floating around the internet use the term chimera to describe what scientists are developing, and go as far as to imply that literal chimera have already been created.
It would be interesting, maybe there have been experiments along these lines with children of various ages.
And they didn't stop at just splicing animals together. They are splicing animals and human genes and DNA together. Remember that message when I talked about, it might have been in the FEMA message, but I talked about that it was a prophetic message, that they are making these things right now to where they don't know, they're having to determine if it's human enough to be judged or if it's more animal and it doesn't have to apply to our laws and regulations. Now that's pretty bad when you have created something and you have to determine, is it going to be just an animal or are we going to judge it like it's a person?
If you go to Disney World, for instance, down there in the Haunted Mansion, you see the hologram, right? Oh, you know how to make a hologram. Well, our scientists have learned how to make people. They call them synthetics. Are you familiar with those?
Well, actually, we just interviewed John Lear, and he was talking about being in an audience in which they were given a lecture by a guy that they thought was real and found out later he was a hologram.
Well, it's a synthetic. The synthetics, when you touch their skin, it feels like plastic almost. That's the latest technique. The old techniques, if you guys can rent a video, the boys from Brazil, rent it, because in it, it gives you the exact way how our government's been making people.
Really?
Yeah,
well,
and the Soviets had a different method called...
making people meaning temporary people?
No, walking, talking ones.
Meaning through genetics? You're not talking about that?
Well, let me tell you. The movie shows it, but I'll share it with you right now.
All right.
All I need to do is take 2 cells off of your body, yours.
Uh-huh.
We give them a small electrical charge. I'm just don't act like a fertilized egg. If I got a fertilized egg, all I need is a receiver in order to make it. So they were hypnotizing women, say they were being invaded by aliens, and the fetus starts growing, right? Needs food. Well, they can use cows and sheep, too. Again, a food source, that's all we need. After about 14 weeks, all of a sudden that fetus is gone because they've learned to that's when the fetus starts developing its own blood supply. Then they've used the pituitary hormone extract that they have, which accelerates the being that grows. And the original technology was given to our government by the Greys. Now, the reason was that our scientists were all excited because we could have spare parts. If you need a heart or a liver or anything, you won't have any rejection. It's your own DNA, right?
Okay, because theoretically, if we have overpopulation, we don't need more people, right?
But the so-called elite are selecting on who they want to have around anyway, so if we want to keep people going as long as we can. I talked to the doctor that was working on regeneration of Castro, for instance.
Right.
On the DNA sequencing. And they're just learning about this.
Well, my understanding is that a lot of presidents have already been replaced.
That's right.
Yeah,
I don't think...
They're walking around, they look old, but they basically, some of the people are just second, third copies.
I'll give you something to ponder. Get some old videos of George Bush, when he first came into office. Look at the person and listen to him speak. Look at his actions and listen to everything that's there. Now, it's a lot easier to put somebody out in front to act as even Bush did. He had somebody else that was up there acting like he doesn't look like it. Even Hitler had he had his stand. In fact, his stand-in was the one that they found in the ground over in Germany. I mean, Hitler and Eva and the dog and 14 other people got aboard a plane and flew down to Barcelona, Spain. You were aware of that. And then ended up in Antarctica or in Swaziland and then died a few years ago in Brazil.
That's what we heard.
I have all the documents from our own government.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a contact.
Stalin asked for they tried to burn the body and he got the body back and he said, we're in different ears and the testicles were different and everything else. So they knew it wasn't Hitler.
But is it a clone or not?
Oh, now going by cloning. Cloning techniques. Since 1938, they've been making clone people. There's 8 countries making clones. I have a doctor friend that all he does is treat the clones.
Where do you get your information?
I get it from some of the people that are willing to come forth, and they talk to me because they hope I'll put the information out because they always got 2 people following them and maybe be killed. If I start talking about cloning too much, the people that get involved into that disappear on it. So I don't go into too many more details, but there is information that's available. And it's more and more that's coming on the line. I just told you, go rent the movie.
Okay, Boys from Brazil.
Yeah, and you'll see the whole technique on what they show it to you in different places, so you can imagine what's going on.
Okay, so...
Now let's go to the next step, because this is the most important part.
All right.
If your physical reality that you have, based on this physical life that you have this dream, is made up of the experiences that is impregnated on your body and in your mind, consciously, right? Mm-hmm. Your soul memory is another thing. It goes back whatever time that you elected to be in this incarnation for whatever reason. Now let's show you the division on these things. Since the body's very physical, and we just got you making a physical being in a few months for spare parts, they said, now we got the perfect deal. How can we have that work better? Well, if you go to the hospital today and get an encephalogram, what's that? That's the memory of your conscious mind. It's on the CD. Let's download it on this being. Now we got a walking, talking duplicate that has the total memory that you have, because we just took it off of your own mind.
Okay, it's like Blade Runner, the android.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. The only thing is that it's like this DVD recorder. Sometimes you have glitches in it, so you have to have them tuned up occasionally or redone. And so we take them to Camp David, or there's a wing at Bethesda Hospital to just tell you. If you go down there and check, you'll find the nurses, if they're willing to come forth, they'll tell you they work on those people, and they call them the others. I thought it was interesting. They're people. Remember, these people can think and act, but they don't have soul. That's also prophesized.
Right,
Soulless
that's
beings.
true. That's true.
Now we have another agenda that's going on, so you have to be careful of all this. There are many extraterrestrials that would like to be in on the game right now, so they can sometimes will come into these physical beings that we've made to manipulate them.
I see.
So now you have a combination effort that you have to look at, and discernment. You have to discern what the game is. Well, just figure that most of the leaders we have in the world have been bought and paid for or created to think a certain way.
And then it was such a hit. It was way bigger than I even anticipated. And now, I think we're going to make part 2. I think you have to. I think you have to. They kill you if you try to walk away. And they clone you.
What have we done? What have we done? So, Donald said on this gene splicing floor, they're making weapons for war.
Is actually having one animal learn something and seeing and recording that activity and put it into the sensory cortex of the second animal, and that animal acquires the knowledge. From the human drone technology standpoint, you can attach the human brain to another human brain, you can direct motor activity, or you can send communication and information. Dr. Ventnor's work is, my view, the equivalent of the development of nuclear weapons when you realize that he created life in a cell. He programmed yeast cells to produce anything you wanted. These can be inserted into you through the hypospray needles. You put in a specific gene slicing, you program what you like, you put it in the cell, and it can reproduce and make as much as you like. It sends a signal and tells which portion of the DNA should unwrap, unfold, and produce a product. Related to this is an idea called dreads. These are designer receptors that can be remotely controlled. You can create a cell, you can put it somewhere in the body, and you can remotely activate it. So you have the capacity to create any product. As long as you know the DNA sequence, you can insert it into a living system, and you can remotely control it. That may affect the way you think, the way you act. So once you know that the technology is there to edit, splice, and program a cell, and the technology currently exists to administer it to somebody and have it go park anywhere you program it to go park, proliferate, and do its function, you can have things activated in other people's brains. These people have figured out how to hide imagery in the DNA of bacteria. You can have the information reproduced in a string form as a form of a protein. The new way to hide information is going to be in DNA. This is the first experiment showing what imagery you can hide in bacteria. This is the latest. It's a GIF file. Well, this is what the Chinese are doing with DNA. Merging DNA systems with quantum computing will be really quite an amazing and both lethal threat. The next thing I wanted to mention to you is memory. Can we erase memory? Can we modify memory? Can we change memory? The short answer is yes.
Now, are you getting a picture of that? This is talking about splicing different animals together. This is talking animals and humans. This is talking about making things that don't exist naturally, that God didn't create. Now we're creating things, and they're creating things in these labs on this splicing floor that is going to be a weapon of war. Strange animals and things that can be used in war. And everything that creeps upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. I pulled that scripture because I want you to see that God has always said, after the same kind. If it's a rabbit, it's going to stay a rabbit. A rabbit is a rabbit is a rabbit, not a rabbit / deer. Let's put them together and see what we get. No. He said after its kind. And now we've decided, let's improve on this. That ain't no good. Let's start mixing it up and see what we can create. We can do anything. Now we're trying to be creators, aren't we? Now, Donald talks about 4 types of clones. Replication cloning. This is what they call these at the cloning station. That's when you take cells and you make a baby that's exactly the same as a person that already exists. That's like what I would call like a real clone. Okay? That's still not God's way. But we know that that's what they're doing, where they're taking the cells and fertilizing it, and they're making exactly another baby, say just like another child that exists. They're exactly the same.
And very small segment of society, and it's tremendously interesting. But no way should the public ever be told about this.
What do you think would happen if they were?
It would probably cause problems that the governments of the world are not equipped to handle. The basic issue is religion.
We were talking about genetic engineering.
what is it when they create a human?
Cloning?
Yeah, I said, John, what do you know about cloning? And I said, nothing. I mean, this was so far out to me, and he said, just let me tell you, it's all real and it's all happening. And this is from Cecil McMains, a guy who's so down to earth, who worked on the SR-71, who did a lot of stuff, you know, and he would never, ever come out with something so unusual.
So they have Frankenstein, the missing kids, the milk carton kids.
You know, I used to talk a lot about that, and there was a lot of kids that were missing in like 83, 84, 85, and it's my understanding that the FBI discontinued annual reports of missing people. Because
there was a million that were missing, and then actually about 80 or 90,000 that just simply disappeared. I mean,
Mr. Gallant, are you an attorney, sir?
I am.
You know, when I was a cop, we had a common saying, a bit of a chuckle. We'd say that I've known many convicts I can trust in my life and very few attorneys. You're here representing the ACLU, sir. Do you speak on behalf of the ACLU this day?
Yes.
You're here voluntarily?
Yes.
Are you here with counsel or are you by yourself?
I'm by myself.
Congratulations. These 85,000 missing children. What's your opinion about that? How's the ACLU feel about 85,000 missing children?
So,
you think their civil rights might be being violated?
Our view is that those children are not likely missing, that the sponsors don't simply answer the phone.
Yeah, the sponsors are not real. You know that, right? It's a racket. It's a sponsor racket. That's why they're not answering the phone. That's why you can't find who they are. The vast, large percentage of these sponsors, these kids are getting sucked into sex trafficking primarily, human slavery. The policies of this administration are supporting that. We're partnering with the cartels with human trafficking. By God.